This presentation was recorded at the Kansas City Developer Conference. This audio file and others like it are available for free download at infoq.com.
Welcome to Hacking for Fun and Profit Legally. Oh, I know it's legal. Sorry. Sometimes we got to actually not break the law. So that's actually what this is about. Not just making money, but learning how to do something that is so super fun and make money from doing it. So a little bit about me. I happen to be a CTO. I've been a chief technical officer of a bunch of different companies for a couple of years now. My main company is called Rocketeer. What we do is we help other companies get off the ground. I'm more famous for a company that I helped to found called Evernote. You probably have it installed on your phones automatically, and then you have to hack it off your phone. I'm the only female advisory board chair for an engineering school in the world currently. What's cooler about it is I actually don't even have an engineering degree because I dropped out of my aerospace degree with one semester left, switched and got a liberal arts degree because I wanted to have a degree in how to think instead of what. So I thought that was pretty cool. And so did they, which is why they named me the chair of the engineering school. I was voted Female Executive of the Year, and I also got a commendation by the government for my mentorship and my work in schools. Interestingly, this was not my first foray with the government because back when I was 15 years old, those black vans came outside my house and had a little talk with my parents about things I was doing. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But I am also a columnist for Inc. and Forbes and Tech.co, which some of you may read. They span the globe and span lots of different topics. You've probably read some of my stuff as clickbait or learning about other things. So I do a lot of stuff. So what is hacking? It is to write computer programs for enjoyment or to gain access illegally. Why do you think it is a definition that is so completely different? So we have a word that actually has two very different meanings. And that actually is a very big problem because if you have an ethical dilemma, something that means something different to people, if you say, oh, I'm hacking on something tonight, which a lot of us do, oh, I'm spending up all night hacking on this project, which is to work on a program. But somebody else hears that doesn't know what you're talking about, and they're like, "Oh my god, you're breaking into my bank." That's not what you're doing. But it means the same thing. So here we have a problem. And another thing, hacking isn't just about software. How many people here, and this is an everybody question, how many people have picked a lock in their life? I've had to pick my lock to get into my hotel room sometimes when I forgot the key. It's sometimes like one of the first things I did when I was a teenager was learn how to get into my car when I couldn't find the key. Hacking is not just software. It's any time you're doing something that is slightly around the rules to get into things in ways that it is not meant to be done. What are the motivations of hackers? There's a lot of different things that could happen here. Now, sometimes it's personal gain. It could be as simple as money. A lot of hackers are doing things for money, or it could be like, I need to get into my hotel room because I'm tired. Could be activism or moral objection. Like, this is the thing that needs to get changed, so I need to do that. Or you really have an authentic concern for security and protection. And most of us that are developers have that, sometimes tied with personal gain, or it wouldn't be in a talk about profit. So we want to know what the profile of different hackers are. So a black hat hacker is a villain, right? And they're the black hats, like the man in black and all of these guys in movies. So a villain of the black hat, what does he do? They go in without permission. These are people that are doing whatever they can in the background to go into something without permission. So what's something that you can think of that is associated with a black hat? Stealing credit card numbers is classic black hat because generally you're going for personal gain there. There is no reason that somebody would be getting personal credit card numbers in a white hat method. So the motivation of black hat is personal benefit. 100% all the time, they're doing this for themselves. Now, white hat, these guys are the good guys, right? They're vigilantes. They're looking for security flaws and vulnerabilities. And this, again, it doesn't have to be in a software setting. So think about somebody like PETA. PETA does white hat stuff. They go into buildings to set out Greenpeace. They set whales free. They're doing white hat things to save the world. They want to benefit the community. White hat. Gray hat hackers. Ooh, gray hat. Now, when you are talking to a black hat or a white hacker and you bring up gray hats, also known as red hats, so it could be a gray hat or a red hat, but when you talk up about a gray hat hacker, they instantly freeze. They're like, oh, we don't know those guys. Gray hat hackers they can use either type of method. And that's a problem because they don't pick a side. When something comes up, they have an ethical dilemma about what should I do? And they have the same kind of thing. They want to protect the common good, but it's their perception of what the common good is. So they make their own decisions about what the world should be. So can you think of who fits the profile? Snowden is a very famous gray hat hacker. And I'm going to get into something very curious in a minute about how gray hats and white hats can work together. But Snowden, why is he gray hat? He was a whistleblower, there are laws about whistleblowing. So he made a decision to not follow the rules that were set in place in his company for responsible disclosure. He made a decision that it wasn't going to work. So he went around those rules to let go of the materials that he had, even though the white hat hackers that he was working at WikiLeaks were trying to help him to do it in a different way. He put himself in danger. He made himself a traitor to this country and can't ever come back because he felt that it needed to come out. And he had that overwhelming urge to do it. The way that you can tell, a black hat hacker, it's their fault. So that's why it's okay for me to do this. Oh, they let their credit card number go out there so I can steal it. White hat. Yeah, but it's our responsibility to help them so they don't do it again. Gray hat. I don't want to get in trouble. So I'm not going to put myself out there. These are the ways to tell who you're dealing with. So what is ethical hacking? Legal. That's number one thing. Like ethical hacking is legal. There are actually rules on how to do it. And you get permission to do it first. So you actually can get somebody's credit cards. Say after the Target hack, after the Jimmy John's hack, after all those things, they actually set up zones so that people could come in and try it again and again to see if they were shored up. It's part of an overall security program. And you can identify things coming from the internet. Or if it's a hardware hack, like with a bank or something, then you're setting up a time to try and break into a bank, which is so. But again, never do this unless you have permission, or else you end up in jail or with black vans coming to your house, talking to your parents, or carting you away because you're over 18. So you do not want this to happen to you. So how do we do this? First, you download the code that is allowed to be downloaded, and you put it on a system that you silo. If you don't have the ability to silo things, like you can set up a VPS on your own site or your own air-gapped system just fine. And if you don't know how to do that, then I'll get into that later. And then only try to find vulnerabilities in systems that you, again, have permission to do this. If you are really interested in hacking Facebook, they have a responsible disclosure program to do that. Go to the Facebook site, go to the security site, and be like, I want to learn how to secure Facebook. And it's all right there about how you can do that. Or you can go to school for this and become an academic and teach people how to do it, which is another way to do it. But that takes a long time, and you could actually start doing this as soon as you get home today. So let's do an ethics test, and I want you all to raise your hands about the thing that I don't want you to answer the thing that you think is the right answer. I actually want you to answer the thing that you really believe, okay? You gonna nod here about this? So, there's no wrong answers here. This is actually just how you believe. So, when you find a vulnerability in software, what should you do? Tell the world? Okay. Tell the company or group responsible. Okay. Sell the information. All right. It's your own personal decision. Okay. Or first disclose it to the company and then release the information. Okay. Now you want to know
There's no option 6.
there's no option 6.
There's no do nothing.
There's no that's personal decision.
Okay.
4. Okay. So, black hat, tell the world. Y'all knew that. White hat, tell the company or black hat, sell that information. Gray hat, personal decision. Gray hat, first disclose, then release. So, if you were gray hat, then we need to talk. But that's why you're here. But it's okay. So those of us that are white hat, and I am somebody that is declared white hat, and if you are declared black hat, that's also cool, by the way, because there are ways that you can legally do stuff. Gray hat, you need to pick a side. That would be gray hat.
I was doing where hat though.
Because, well, it's either gray hat or you're not a hacker at all. Then you're gray hat. Because you're you're based on your own moral code on what to do. Because a white hat hacker has very specific rules of ethics. And they will then follow. If you found something wrong and you didn't do anything about it, because a black hat person will, they're going to blackmail somebody or make money off it. A white hat person feels a responsibility to do something about it. A gray hat, yeah, you don't know what they're going to do. And that makes them dangerous. Because you're making up your own rules about what to do. Because if you're informing the public, if you're informing the public about something without knowing the consequences of that, for example, the reason that what Snowden did was so bad was because he didn't have the optics of everything. He only knew what he understood, and he was a low-level tech. So he didn't know what the governments were deciding, what they were all like, what all of those programs were, what ramifications would be. He just felt that, oh, the people should know that they're being spied on. And that was what he felt. But he didn't think about, oh my gosh, by doing this, people are going to die. And they did. As soon as that was released, immediately soldiers were killed, spies were killed, not just ours, but other countries, because we had information in that leak that were let out. Because he didn't think about, there was a lot of information that was compromised. So if you do things responsibly, then people that have higher optics than you will be able to do things. Because if you think about it, when you're an intern in a company, how much do you know? Very little. When you're the CEO of a company or the CTO, the roadmap 20 years out, all of the stuff that's going on, or you should. So if the intern's coming in on day one and they're saying, oh my God, we should be doing it this way and this way and this way, they don't know that you've already tried that. They don't know that you've already done that. And they don't know that you actually already have those things in place because they only see what they see. So if you find a vulnerability and you decide for yourself that the world needs to know about that without knowing that all of these things are already in place and already in motion, and what you've done is now screw everything up for a whole bunch of other things, that is a big problem. And that's why gray hats are so dangerous. Then there are whistleblower laws with our government and other governments around the world that you can work with. So it's not that you just have to work with that company, but you can work with the government. So you still don't have to tell the world. There are chains of command that you can go to. You can go to the government, and then you can go further up in the government, and so on and so forth. But it's telling the world can have ramifications that you can't even believe. Sometimes you're going to find a vulnerability without legally hacking into software. Because sometimes, how many of us have run into a cross-site scripting error with just because? So you're going to find vulnerabilities sometimes. And then as soon as you find that, then you can start going down I want to responsibly disclose this before, but you weren't actually necessarily hacking, but you just ran into it. And then you want to go down So that is another thing. When you go through some ethics tests as a hacker, that actually comes into depending on your government and the rules of your government. There are some sites, for example, if we're under sanctions with a country, if we're not under trade agreements, then we're not even allowed to technically be using software from that country in the first place. For example, if you are selling to Libya, then you are technically breaking the law right now. If you're an e-commerce company, and if you're selling to Iran, if you're selling to North Korea, like if you are offering software that you're not blocking these countries, then you're not doing things correctly. If you're running a blockchain service and you're not blocking Japan, Brazil, Russia, China from accessing those servers from your blockchain ledger, then you're technically breaking the law. There are things that you need to take into account for our government when you're doing these things. And when you go through the ethics certification, if you choose to go down that road as a security researcher, that you will run into. That brings us to, how do you get hired as a security researcher? Now, this is another problem, because if you are a declared hacker, how do you get hired? I've run into this myself, obviously, because I sit on a lot of government boards. The first time I say out of my head, I'm a white hat hacker, like I see the flinches on their faces. And then they're like, oh, wait, this is useful to us, because having this person on the other side of the table is useful because they can set up things that we need. But again, how do we ever get rid of them? Because they're going to hack us. So it's really useful to get hired and really useful to not get fired. Yeah, because they don't want to risk the possibility of letting you go. But the thing is, if you are an ethical hacker, then there's no problem at all. And that's your job in letting them know that. If you are an unethical hacker, then you're going to get fired anyway, and you're probably going to blackmail the company. So that's the big line that you need to make sure. When you are under NDA, for example, you are just making sure that you agree to the terms that you have signed. And when you are joining up with a bug bounty, for example, whether you are a black hat or a white hat hacker, you are agreeing to join the terms of the bug bounty and abide by them. You are signing a contract and saying that I'm going to do whatever I agree to. So when you join a company, you sign whatever documents they say are going to be valid to this job. So if you sign a contract for 6 months, for example, that says I'm going to be doing penetration testing or something with you, I'm going to be setting up honeypots, which are super fun as well. Especially if you set up a honeypot, when you set up a server specifically set to be a trap for other hackers coming in. And they like to hire security researchers to come in and set those up so that you can catch other hackers. And that'll only be like a 6 to 9 month contract generally, but they pay a lot of money. What you do is you sign a contract, you say you're going to do this, and then the contract also stipulates that you don't talk about the fact that you just did that. Because if you were to say, oh yeah, I just worked for company X and I set these up, then it's useless to them. And you also know how to get around it because you set it up. So you just don't talk about it. Now, bug bounties also have contracts with the company. They tell you how to go through and hack their system. And they actually give you a lot of information about the vulnerabilities they already have and how to get in and how to get around it. And then they pay you money to find more. And some pay you a lot of money. And this is actually a job where people are making between $60,000 and $75,000 a year just in a couple hours a week at night after their normal jobs, just like pounding on websites. So there's people in Sri Lanka and India and other places overseas that this is all they do now, because there's a lot of people that just can't work elsewhere. But here, colleges that are doing certified ethical hacker programs, as part of it, they're training the kids to do that. And then they never even have to go and get a job other than this.
How do you deal with the things a black hat hacker would do? So I'm looking like SEO attacks, but you wouldn't do SEO attacks because that would be against your nature. But I would do an SEO attack, hypothetically, to get what I would want.
So would I not do an SEO attack? I use black hat methods as a white hat hacker because I know them and they work. I do a lot of social engineering because that's actually the number one method of hacking into anything. I know all the methods, I do them all, and then I use them, but it's my motivation. that makes me white hat. It's not the methods that I use. But the thing is, I don't do it unless I have strict permission, a contract that says that I'm doing this, and I don't do anything without the go ahead, and it's during set times, and I log everything. So, as a hacker, knowing these methods, there are strict rules, and that is how you do it legally. You make sure that everything you do, you log it. You have permission ahead of time. Repeat after me. I need permission. Yeah, CYA. All right. Pen testing is the most fun thing that I do. It's so fun because it's like first you analyze a system and then you get to exploit it. And it doesn't seem this would be fun, but it's like at first you get to use the analysis and then you get to go in and like really pound a system. This gets my heart racing because like you get like Russian and Chinese hackers like coming at you all the time, and then you get to like really every time they fight you, then you go back and you just keep going back and forth, and it's like a live game of chess or Go or something, but you feel like it's for a war that you're fighting. And we do staging events that are red team, blue team penetration tests in companies. And I actually started doing this thing called Cyber Patriot, which the government runs, and it starts in sixth grade. And so kids are actually doing this against each other, coming up with ways to infiltrate each other online. And it helps. So by starting by doing this, you get to learn how to do penetration testing. And it is part of a larger security analysis. But it's actually not a good way to ensure that a system is secure because you're coming up with more and more vulnerabilities. But a lot of security researchers just do it for fun, and they find more bugs and more vulnerabilities by doing it. So it shows that you're not secure. So it's really fun, but not a way to show you're secure. So here's another test. Frank Abagnale, if you've ever seen the movie Catch Me If You Can, he's one of the most famous what type of hackers of all time. Black Hat. Yes, Black Hat. So he is the father of social engineering. He like almost invented the field because he figured out how to get anything he wanted. And now he actually has turned white hat and has been doing that very successfully for almost 30 years after being caught by the government, being in jail for a bit, as most black hat hackers do. But he is a very famous guy because of his social engineering skills. Julian Assange is what kind of hacker? Oh, all right. He is a white hat hacker. He's a very famous white hat hacker. And this is where people get confused because of his association with Snowden and all of the other things that WikiLeaks released. However, Julian himself is a white hat hacker. He has a very strict code of ethics about the things that he does. And that code of ethics is specifically, he does not harm systems that he breaks in. He does not alter any information in systems that he breaks into. And he shares that information responsibly with the companies and governments that he goes to. WikiLeaks works with the governments and the companies first before releasing. In fact, there were many instances just in the last year where they held information back so that they could work with the governments to figure out what they were able to responsibly disclose. So people send stuff to WikiLeaks all the time, but that doesn't mean they're going to release it. So Julian Assange is a very famous white hat hacker. There are things that are bad about him, but also, yeah, he's ethically bad as a person. But also, that's another thing. He is a white hat hacker, and hacking is still illegal unless you do it. But his methods are still white hat. His motivation is still white hat. Now, WikiLeaks is different from Julian Assange, and that's important to remember the distinction. As far as gray hat hacking, here's a perfect example. Now, this person was part of the responsible disclosure program on Facebook. And what they did was they reported something through the responsible disclosure program, and Facebook did not respond fast enough. Then the person decided to release it on their own. And Facebook banned, and then the person got very upset because they're like, well, I reported this bounty, I should get the $1,000. And Facebook said you didn't follow the rules of the responsible disclosure program. You are obviously banned, and it doesn't matter that you found this bug. You didn't wait for us to verify it. You didn't wait for us to fix it. You violated the terms. You agree when you're joining these things to follow a certain code of ethics. You follow the rules, and that makes it gray hat. So, how do you make money? You get certified. If you are gray hat, black hat, or white hat, your motivation, you can then get a certification that shows people they can trust. And then trusting you gets you paid. Because there's a ton of people out there that are good, that are really good, that can go into a system, that can find all these things, that can run pen tests like nobody else. But if you are certified, that makes you money. And here's the different kinds of certifications you can get. You go to the GIA and you start with the Security Administration certs. And then you can get a GIAC pen test certification and an exploit researcher or an advanced penetration certification thing. Or you can go to Mile 2, and they have a pen test hacking series that you can use. They also have a certified vulnerability assessor and certified professional ethical hacker and certified penetration testing engineer. So you can actually do all of these things online, or there's also in-person ones. For example, at UNLV, where I consult, we actually have a master's level class that only about one semester that you can go through to get your certified ethical hacker. And it becomes a master's. It's it ends up to be, you get a master's certified ethical hacking security researcher certificate. So what are your motivations? Like, are you doing it for personal gain or an authentic concern for security? Then if you're doing it for fun, then I think that everything that you do should be fun. I love pen tests. It's super fun. Doesn't mean I'm not white hat. I think you should always have a fun element to what you're doing, but figuring out the thing deeper than that. Why is it fun for you? What is that motivation behind it? Because if it's just fun, then okay. So that challenge is personal gain because you're looking for what's there. That's a victor kind of thing. That's recognition. But in yourself, like, I want my name on the top of the scoreboard, that kind of thing. So it's finding out what your personal motivation in doing it is, because if you understand that, then you'll be able to better corral yourself and know how to keep yourself on the straight and narrow, because this is a very difficult thing to do. If you even waver for a second, then you are going to end up in very big trouble very quickly. So if you're black hat, then you're going to want to try seeking out work environments that are competitive and tend to deal with highly classified information that needs protecting. So, like government, and working for a payment structure that has bonuses for getting stuff or extra commissions, that's something that a black hat hacker is going to love. Because again, that recognition, like the more pen tests, like the more times you win on the blue team and you get bonuses for that, a black hat hacker is going to love that challenge. Real estate brokers, loan offices are for this kind of thing. And you're like, wait, why would you need a hacker in a real estate office? That MLS system is terrible if anybody's ever tried to buy a house. There are a lot of, and loans, like the loan system is awful as well. So there's always security research jobs in these places. So look for job offers that are in places that have commission structures or bonuses. If you're white hat and if you're looking for security and protection, then look where security and protection and are serious parts of the job. So banking, data centers, and highly regulated industries are where a white hat hacker is going to be found. For example, I have worked in security most of my career, hospital, government, things like that. As long as you have your certifications and have built up a reputation, then as a white hat hacker, you're going to do fine in these, because you're going to constantly feel that need fulfilled of, I'm doing something great. Gray hats, got to decide, man. You got to decide. So if your main motivation is activism or moral objection, then it's really going to be a hard sell for you to get hired unless you go to someplace like Greenpeace or PETA or someplace. But even then, you're going to have to learn to toe the line because the ones that are rogue vigilantes there, they do not last long because they don't like it when they end up not having a side. So you're not going to be able to pass that ethics test if you're not going to be able to get a certification. Unless you could fake it, obviously, but that's going to come out at some point. So if you're gray hat, you're just going to have to get a normal day job, people. All right. No hacking for you until you figure out what your motivation is, because those ethical dilemmas are really going to cause a problem for your employers. Like that Facebook researcher, he couldn't even get $1,000 bug bounty because they weren't working fast enough. He couldn't deal with it. So you need to choose the side. So where do you go? Because both white hats and black hats use each other's methods. Just because like you have the motivation of a white hat or the motivation of a black hat, you're still going to use each other's methods to get in. But there are demands for security researchers everywhere. So if you are somebody that is ethical and is good at this, then you will have no problem making money at it. And these certifications are cheap. It's like less than $1,000, you're certified. Get yourself past the test, and then you're good. And you can make that money back on any of the bug bounties pretty quickly. Just a couple weeks ago, I was in England, and the national health system there was hacked. And it actually went down for days. There were people that were stuck because when a hospital service goes down, which is like an entire government system went down, and it wasn't just in England, it was all across Europe and the rest of the world. We were lucky that because of the time zone, we had a 5-hour lead on knowing what was going on. So we told the hospitals to turn it off so we were able to patch the servers, and Microsoft was able to patch all the hospitals before America woke up, or most of them. It wasn't that we weren't vulnerable to it. It was just that we had time to fix it. But what happened was that one hacker, which has now been caught, had used ransomware to shut down all these hospitals and then caused the hospitals to come to a standstill because everything is now digital. So people couldn't have surgeries. There were people that lost their only opportunity to have a liver transplant or a lung transplant or whatever because doctors couldn't do it because they couldn't get to the records. They couldn't operate the tools. They couldn't get into systems. And one hacker shut down half the world's hospital systems. So it's not that governments are the problem. It's that unethical hackers are an issue. And we need security researchers out there to fix these bugs. And what's interesting is the hacker that they caught was actually one that had been famous for catching another hacker previously in a very big hack as well. So he was gray hat. He was depending on the thing using whatever he felt for personal gain. Most black hat hackers started out doing malware, ransomware, things like that, but it changes over time. Why don't we call them red hat hackers? Because red hat doesn't like it when you say red hat hackers. So I try not to do that anymore. Yes, DDoSs are one of the most popular ways of hack because it costs companies millions of dollars every time a site goes down. And you don't even recognize that. But just think about whenever Amazon West or Amazon East goes down and it takes down all these sites. Now, they're not going after one particular site, or they might be. But by going after Amazon, they're not actually trying to go after Amazon. They might actually just be trying to be annoying to prove that we are not in control of all of the data. So hackers are, and that's why Anonymous is such a problem, because Anonymous themselves, which is actually it was started as a prank by a group on 4chan who thought it was funny. And then people thought it was a great idea and now do all sorts of things in the name of Anonymous. So you can't actually say that Anonymous is this terrible hacker group because there's people doing all sorts of things in that name. But it's quite dangerous, all the things that people can do. It's very good to at least take the practice tests before you get into a bug bounty program, because you really want to know what you're getting into. And definitely before you do any bug bounty, read the terms of those agreements because you need to know what you're agreeing to. For the responsible disclosure programs that I run, I make sure that I set up a siloed server for people that they can go to and run whatever they want, but I don't want them doing anything on my live server because I don't want them touching any live data. And if somebody does that and see it on the live server, then sorry guys, you're not getting anything. So if you go to HackerOne, for example, which I actually for some reason is not on this page. So Hacker is a great site for bug bounties. There's a nice section where it shows you the differences in each bug bounty. So you can read the terms of service, like the general terms once, but then go to each individual one's terms of service and say, for example, on mine and on a lot of them, it says, please don't report cross-site scripting errors. So like you will not get anything for a cross-site scripting error. And on other things too. Some people will report things and also it'll tell you exactly how you need to report things, like how the things need to be reported, what you need to do. So the more detailed they are, the easier it is for you.
So as a white hat hacker, do you feel like you're limited in what you can do versus what a black hat hacker can do? Not because of the lack of knowledge, but because certain methods that a black hat user may use are inherently illegal and can't do them unless you're willing to break the law. So that's not a problem, or is that
Well, no, because I'm not willing to break the law. There was a time before many of you were born where that what we were doing was all gray hat, but we didn't know because there wasn't this gray hat, white hat, black hat thing. So everything we did was nebulous until we got caught. And then there was something called freaking, for example, that was absolutely illegal, where you would fake phone calls. You would fake the sound of what it sounded like to make the sound in a payphone. And then you would call long distance. Obviously, that doesn't exist anymore because we don't have payphones. But some things were obviously illegal. Other things, like using your modem to call up a library and go into the library's database, were not obviously illegal. But it was illegal because that was a government server that you didn't have permission to access. So before there were written rules for these things, we were doing things that didn't have rules. So now that there are written rules, I follow them.